start kind of at the let's start with the GT2. I mean, I think that car is compelling in the first place, being that it was the first GT2. Do you recall ordering that car? Do you recall kind of the early start with that car and in your ownership and your interaction with Porsche with it?
I remember clearly. It was actually at the Porsche banquet in 1994 in Weissach. That's when they have that annual party and the Porsche Cup celebration. And they had a car actually sitting there. It was actually a mock-up version of a GT2. And they announced it to the public that day, which was sometime in late November of 1994. And I was like, wow, that could be the car, going forward, because we raced the RSR, but the RSR, as a great fun car. I mean, no doubt, but it did lack, power. And I was like, okay, there she is, GT2, here we go. And then, we started talking, and then we rather quickly made a deal and said, well, let's get one built for me, and let's get it outfitted for GT1, actually. That's, I don't know if you know of that. Back then, we decided to buy it and get it in time for the 24-hour Daytona in 1995. But for the GT1 class, it made more sense, to enter it in GT1. And then the factory, what they actually did is they put bigger wheels and tires on it right away, 12 and a halves on the rear. And then we got the tire deal with Goodyear, and Hurley driving. So he brought that to the table. And then Bernd Mailänder, the current Formula One pace car driver, myself, and was it who else was it? Was it David Murray or Andy Pilgrim?
Yeah, it was Murray. Murray for Daytona.
Murray,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, it was David Murray. And so and then actually I had a few other cars entered for the race as well in 1995, but obviously the GT2 was the talk of the town. And I never forget when I first took it out at Daytona. I've never driven a twin turbocharged race car, and I mean, it was just absolutely incredible. I got in the car and put it in first gear and slowly got on it, and then after my confidence got built up, then you step on it more, and then the shift light comes on, and then you let off the gas, and then the wastegates go
Yeah.
let off the booze, and then you're like, wow, this is fun, and so. And it was just great. I mean, that was probably one of the best races I had. Awesome co-drivers, learned a lot from those guys. Great support from Porsche. The car was really good out of the box. Some factory technicians actually came over because at that time, they actually did not sell that car for street use yet. So they still did some last-minute changes on the piston sizes for the rear brake calipers. So it was still, a little bit of a test bed, for the street car at the same time. And that's like I say, I mean, that was absolutely incredible. And then the Porsche LMP car at that time got outlawed last minute. I don't know if you knew that or not. They had like an open top Spider actually, prepped for that race, but then they put like a whole bunch of weight on it and made it, so to speak, uncompetitive. At the end, actually, Porsche still won the race overall. That was the Kramer Spider car, much to the surprise of the Porsche factory. But we hung in there and we finished fourth overall, second in class, which was pretty incredible, for GT2 out of the box in GT1, And we then did Sebring with it, but then we actually had a drive shaft issue with the car, and we didn't finish that race. And then we switched over to the CCA, what was it called back then? World or Supercar Series. That was what it was called. And then we did, David Murray drove the other car, which I then bought in the meantime, another GT2, and I drove the yellow car, and then we finished that season, first overall with David Murray driving and me third, right behind the factory Corvette.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a great season. No problems whatsoever. Had top 5 finishes, in every race.
Yeah.
And it was good times. Good times.
95. I mean, geez, yeah. There was a point, May of 95, you went Phoenix to Mosport to Lime Rock all in the same month. I mean, you had a full schedule in 95.
Yeah, sure. Yes, we did.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
How and you said the car was reliable, just an easy car out of the box.
Yeah, very easy out of the box, very compliant. And even by changing the setup, drastically from GT1 back to GT2, with street tires, no problem. Obviously, shocks were changed, springs were changed, but, the suspension allowed you so much, adjustment. It was great. Mm-hmm. And then Alvin from Porsche, he really took care of the engine management. Made sure that we had the right programs. We had like a switch in the car where you had like 4 different programs in it, and yeah, it was fantastic. It was great. I mean, it was in my opinion fun to drive. Easy to drive, very controllable at the limit. And then over the season, this was added, that was added. So mm-hmm. It was yeah, good car, really good car.
Was that your best finish at Daytona up until that point? Second in class?
Yes. And then I think I finished a couple of times second in the supercar race or championship. I think Rohr and mm-hmm. In Atlanta, if I can recall. But I would have to go back, into my notes for that.
I've got my cheat sheet here of all the race finishes, so I'm glancing down at it as we speak. So, but yeah, you I mean, geez, what a campaigned car. It was quite interesting. Do you recall with your first impressions? Because I know when I drove that car, there's this little window that it operates in, right? It's kind of nothing's happening, then it's a bit of chaos, and then you're in overboost and you go, oh, geez. And you have to operate in this little window. And if you get a downshift just a little off, you're back out of the power band, or you're going, oh, nope, that's too much. And I found that's part of the fun of the car, though, is trying to just keep it in this really fun, sweet spot where the car's just so alive. Did you find that was difficult when you first got in, or did you think that you just kind of, got a little faster and started to understand it more, or was it a natural transition?
It was actually, it was a natural transition. It had the 6-speed gearbox, which helps a lot, obviously, and we changed a lot of the gears all the time, mm-hmm. That was definitely something we changed a lot. So you kept it kind of like in the power band pretty much all the time. Mm-hmm. And like you say, exactly, I mean, I don't know, remember, but it was like 4,500 RPM plus. That's where it was really, starting to be fun, to 6,500, 6,800, that's how high we rev the car. That and then you just keep it in that power band and you're good, So
did you know you were getting body number 001? Were you aware of that, or was it something that got delivered and you went, oh, interesting? Or did you not really know at the time? Or
well, I knew that it was one of the first cars, but back then we really didn't care too much about serial numbers, And but you're right. I mean, we were just wanting to get the car, and then it ended up being, the first production race car, So yeah. So
had Porsche painted it yellow for you from the factory, or was that something you did after receipt of the car?
No, that was done at the factory. I always loved yellow Porsches. I never forget my father. He had a friend and he visited us back in '73, and he had a yellow 73 RS, and that's since then that's my color. But it shifted a little bit. That's speed yellow, and then later on I switched over to signal yellow. As on the RSR. So
And then you were running the white and blue cars. Was there just it's a little bit of an aside, but was that a transition for one reason or another? That was a sponsorship transition, right? For white and blue you were running, or
Um, actually, when we talked about doing the supercar, the Bridgestone Supercar series, Porsche was wanting to have David Murray in one car, me in the other car, and then they found the white one in Germany. It was available. Somebody actually had it ordered and bought, but then last minute you stepped away from it, and then we said, wow, perfect, awesome, that's the car, we need that. And
right.
then it was put on a plane and flown over, and then and then we kept it white because it didn't make sense to read it yellow.
Got it.
So
okay, so that's great. I mean, I like I said, that's like the crowd favorite of everything, this car, and it's approachable. It feels familiar when you're driving it while still feeling special. I thought there was a lot that was really, really enjoyable about it. Plus, it's got a massive fuel tank in it. I mean, you must have gotten such a big amount between stints on that car, because I don't know what it is, like a 30-gallon tank or something in there. It's pretty impressive. But I really, really, really like the car and everything about it. It just feels right. There's a little bit of an aside, maybe you recall. There's actually a set of double driver's side door bars on that. Was that for different series regulations where you just doubled up on one? Because one's more of a NASCAR style bar and one's more of a GT bar. Do you recall whether that was built like that or was that an add-on?
the GT bar came from the factory, the X-Brace,
Yeah.
and then but then the NASCAR part that was added on. That was back then. IMSA required it, as a side impact protection for the driver, and so we did that in our shop.
Got it.
So
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna mute a page real quick here so that way we don't have to hear any noises. Okay, I think we should be good there. Okay. So that brings us over so that car raced 95, once in 96, once in 97. Obviously, there was a continuation of campaigning some cars throughout that period thereafter. And then we get to the signal car, to the RSR, which one of one, to our knowledge, ever paint to sample RSR. I recall when I talked with Brian Sellers about the car that there was some, and I don't know whether it came from Porsche, whether it came from you, that it was that you can't paint the car, you can only wrap it and so forth. From my understanding, it was you had bought the car, but the race program didn't come together that year, and it was sold to Falcon. And maybe walk me through what that looked like as far as that car was concerned.
yeah, well, I mean, I had my intentions were set to race the car in '08 in IMSA, and together with another fella from Atlanta. He also had an RSI at that time. And so we teamed up and decided to do it together. And then I ordered the car, and it has actually it was factory painted in signal yellow. So it's not a home done job. And luckily Porsche did it for me. And then we were out testing with Farnbacher, Horst, and his son Dominic, in Laguna Seca with the car, and it was absolutely incredible. Loved the car, were able to get some good times, and felt like we're gonna be really competitive. But then two things happened. First of all, with the financial crisis back then, that was a big problem. And then my partner from Atlanta, he actually he had a little bit of an incident with his RSR. Coming down after the bridge, coming down Atlanta, the last turn, and that scared him a little bit. And so he decided to say, all right, well, I better don't do it, Yeah. And then with those two events, I decided, well, it really doesn't make sense to, move forward with the program. And then all of a sudden, I actually didn't, I wasn't actually really thinking about selling the car, but then there was a guy from Falcon who called me and he said, you know what, we need an RSR, and we heard, you're not going to raise yours, and what about, us buying the car? So, we went back and forth, and then I decided, what actually makes probably the most sense to let them have it, and so that's what happened, so.
Did you have to twist any arms to get this painted in yellow, or was it something where Porsche with it, hey, we've got a relationship, would be happy to paint it for you, or was that something you had to work for with them?
Well, I know some people in Stuttgart and Weissach, and we talked about it, and so it wasn't actually that big of a deal back then, So I said, hey guys, I really would like to get the car painted in signal yellow, and they said, well, normally we don't do it, but let's check into it, and then all of a sudden, a paint sample actually was delivered to me via FedEx. And with a little note in it, please approve. And so I said, yeah, sure, that's it. That's the color. I still have the paint sample in my drawer, in my
That's funny.
office
That's
desk.
funny.
Yeah. And so they painted it my color, and they sent me some really nice pictures, during when it was built, and because they really enjoyed it as well at Weissach when they built the car, because it's one of a kind, very unique.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny that just the steps between, going from that GT2 to the RSR, right? Completely different cars in every respect almost, despite the lineage, right? Because you go from this car that's effectively a very, very, very modified street tubbed car with a race motor in it, turbocharged, but feels very familiar. So you get in it, you start driving it like a car that you're used to. And then you get into the RSR, especially, the two other Falcon cars we have are pneumatic paddle, but you get into this with the sequential, and you feel instantly that the chassis is unlike any street car. You can tell that it is a race car with a street car-ish looking body on it, and everything is just instant and deliberate, and steering and brakes and motor and everything are working in such harmony with this car. But it's so foreign feeling almost when you think there's not that much time that came between the two cars, but it's completely evolutionary rather than revolutionary between the two cars. And it's beautiful in its own right, but it's very aerospace, right? It's very kind of, wow, look at all these numbered connectors and wires and and especially when you get into the two other Falcon cars where they've got rear firewalls on them, and you feel like you're in a prototype almost with those. But I think that's part of what makes the GT2 car so special, is because it feels like a car that, I don't want to say anyone can go out, and I'm not going to put my grandmother out in the car, but it felt like you were part of something greater than just a Porsche race program. To me, it feels like a part of something where you go, yeah, I understand the car. This car is a little above my pay grade. Like Pat's going out and being like, yeah, man, without the restrictors on these things, they haul, and man, they're a lot of fun. And when Pat's kind of trying to put it together, I know it's outside of my pay grade, and I'm sure to milk it out on this car too. It would be too, but I'd imagine that of a lot of the cars you've driven, this had to have been pretty fun, that GT2. I know you didn't get to spend a lot of time with this car, and you got some testing, which is great. And there's not quite honestly a lot to talk about on the car, the RSR. But I think this one just captures a lot of it captures a lot of what Porsche is about to me.
Yeah.
Where this still does, but this does in a very different manner. It feels accessible. I think that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, especially like in the beginning, it actually came with a, very simple race seat, and then it only had the X bar, or in the roll kit. So it was like easy getting in and out, and you got in it and you felt like you said earlier, more like a street car, with the regular dash and everything, but then with a really souped up motor, it just had lots of power. And yeah, I totally agree with you. But let's face it, I mean, the 993 GT2, that's the pinnacle of the air-cooled Porsches, that's what makes them so special.